validate everything that is
Sorry, I'm going to record this. Just I'm
um,
glad you said that because I had forgotten. Go ahead. Shoot.
so that you can validate everything that has been discussed today before we share our findings. So I'm going to send you over a form just for you to fill out. And if you consent to everything I just said.
Okay, good. I've seen the form, Sammy. I have no problem giving you consent. I will tick off the boxes and send it back to I'll send it back to Mark. I have his email on the form. I'll just send it back to him.
All right, perfect. So
So
before I
tell
go
me
into,
a little bit. Yeah, go ahead. Shoot.
yeah, so before I go into any questions for today, I figured I'd tell you a little bit about myself and my connection to NAMI. So at the age of 15, I was diagnosed with anxiety, panic disorder, and ADHD. And it really took me such a long time to understand what resources there were and what I could do to deal with these struggles. Because honestly, at such a young age, I didn't know anyone, that really was struggling with the same thing, or they weren't openly talking about it. So as I've gotten older, I have obtained a greater understanding of my own mental illness, as well as mental illnesses through a whole, due to my study of psychology, as well as, the greater discussion in recent years of mental health and ways to deal with it. And so I thought that NAMI would give me the opportunity to work with others who are struggling.
Mhm.
I know during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was definitely super difficult, dealing with my mental health and kind of getting through it. And I was just really interested to see how the rest of the mental health community kind of got through it, and
Yeah,
what resources we're doing to change the way
yeah,
they were operating due to the dramatic increase in the number of
yeah,
cases.
yeah. Well, that's great. I really appreciate you saying that and being forthcoming because NAMI is made up of all people who either have a mental health condition or support someone who does, and frequently they're both. But I want to say that a lot of times, even though mental illness is in NAMI's name, a lot of times we talk about mental health conditions because illness, because conditions is everyone has these conditions, and so I just wanted to throw that in to kind of to get just to kind of let you know how NAMI looks at these things. But I appreciate you being forthcoming and saying that because I worked a long time with my parents who had mental health conditions and who were never formally diagnosed. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing as well.
Okay, so you're through with your intro and consent, Sammy?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Kristen, how'd it go?
Okay. Oh, I thought it went well. I thought she did a good job of establishing a personal connection and building rapport through talking about her own experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If I could add something, Sammy, and to the rest of you too. I know we're rushed now, but if you can slow it down and give some space to interact, so I could have, said, "Oh, I see," or something like that. Is that okay, Sammy?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. So, and everybody slow it down, take your time, and give the person some room to jump in. So, okay, good. Thank you. Anything left out, Kristen, that you might have included, or it might have included about yourself? Doesn't have to be a critique of Sammy's presentation. What would you have done in that situation?
I mean, I don't know. I thought Sammy kind of followed the outline we kind of set out last week when we practiced our introductions.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so I don't know, I think just along the same lines, introduce yourself and why you care about this. And I guess maybe also introduce a bit of the project and what our goals are for the interview.
Okay, good point. Sammy, I think Kristen's suggesting you could have given an outline of the 3 areas and why we're doing it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so just for everybody, just feel free to give a summary again. Even though we're going to send an email out summarizing this to people, they might have questions and might want to make, and you never know if they've read it. So can I ask everybody just to take off the mute and this, that way it's going to be you can just speak right up. Don't, and anybody who wants to speak up can speak up. It's yeah, great, thanks. Okay, so area one, Kristen, it's up to you. Go for it.
Okay, so can you tell me a bit about your personal history and experiences here at NAMI?
Sure. I began, my experience with mental health began when I was in college and I worked in an institution for delinquent boys. And I knew right away that the institution was not a form of service that I really wanted to follow up on. So when I got to graduate school after finishing college, um, I decided I was through working in institutions. But at the time, there were very few programs in communities other than the usual United Way type programs like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the YMCAs, YWCAs. There weren't any programs for delinquent kids, and my dissertation was on delinquents and programs in the United States that serve delinquents. And then when I got out, I worked in an agency for about 12 years in child welfare. And then I started doing formed my own corporation and developed program evaluation for nonprofits. And then one time when I was at the University of Michigan, I was supervising as part of my duties, supervising the summer internships for the Department of Psychology. And one of those internships had to do with the National Alliance on Mental Illness and their work in training police to de-escalate crises so that people who were in crisis were not necessarily arrested and their crisis could be de-escalated and kept from getting worse and to prevent their own harm or their potential arrest. I began working, so that was in 2002, and I've worked with NAMI ever since. I became the president of this for about 6 years, and then now what I do is advocacy. So that's kind of my personal history and experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like it's really great that you were able to find an organization like NAMI that matches your values and was something you wanted to work with. So you said you were president of NAMI for 6 years. Could you tell me a bit about your personal journey to becoming president and what your experiences in that position were like?
Sure, that's a great question. It was really, I don't ever remember wanting to be president, but when the existing president decided to step down, I agreed to do it. And at the time, NAMI was a very small, we didn't have any staff. We only had, well, we had an office manager, but that was about it. We had an office that was in real disarray. We didn't have any kind of presence in the community besides the volunteers. So what I said, we very soon after that hired an executive director because I thought it was really important to go into being have a staff presence. And at the time I was president, tried to become kind of the face of the organization in lieu of the executive director. And now our executive director, our ED, now assumes a lot of those roles that I did as president. So it was an area of transition. And then when I stepped down, then other people stepped up, and there was a very difficult transition from the next president. But we finally, that kind of resolved itself, and it came. So that was it took a while. to really achieve some stability for the transition. Transitions are always really hard in these kinds of organizations.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can definitely understand that. I'm sure leadership transitions are often hard, and in an organization like this, I'm sure that's especially so.
Mhm.
So, since we're talking about transitions, what kind of changes have you seen in NAMI? You've been there for such a long time with this organization, and what sort of changes have you seen to the way things are done now?
That's a great question. And so I'm gonna stop now because I want to make sure we get to the other two areas. Kristen, is that okay?
Yeah,
I'm
that's
going to step
totally
out of
fine.
role of a second, because we're getting into this area of stress, but that's a natural transition. So, good for you about making that transition. That could have gone right into the second area of new environments and the pandemic demands. But Paris, what do you give us your comments and observations on Kristen's questions and things you liked and things you might have done a little differently?
I liked overall what Kristen did. She asked the questions really nicely, made sure to validate you in your responses, and then by using like follow-up questions, it shows that she was listening. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
she did.
cool. Okay. Kristen, I thought you picked up on a couple of words. What were the words you picked up on? What was the language you picked up on? I've forgotten. One was transition. What was the one before that?
Oh gosh. I mean, before that, I think it was like leadership maybe, or
Right. Leadership. So that was great. Picking up on language is one of the things we really wanted to do, and because it keeps people grounded in their experience. And I don't think it's really necessary. I think you could have gone right into the language questions and the language use questions. Um, you know, I think, but yeah, those were good. I appreciate that. So. Now, you could have also, Kristen, done some of the techniques for restating, rephrasing, summarizing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You could have said, "What I hear you saying is, you use the leadership, and excuse me if I'm wrong, apologizing, but it seemed like that, you you thought there seemed to be some need for leadership. Uh, you could have explored a little more by using some rephrasing and restating. You catch my drift?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so feel free to pursue things through, but if you use those restating and rephrasing, even mirroring, when you mirror a statement and say exactly the same words back, it gives people a chance to think about it and expand on what they were saying. So, okay, so good job. I'm going to stop this. I'm trying to keep time, and let's go to Paris. You're on area 2, Paris. What experiences with the new environments? So go ahead.
Okay, sorry, my AC just turned on, like literally just now.
No
Okay.
problem.
So what experiences do you have with the new environment and demands that face NAMI?
Yeah. Well, when the pandemic came about, it really threw us all into a mode where we really had to respond and respond quickly because we wanted to continue with the classes. So we immediately tried to get some experience with Zoom, and then what that meant was we had to really find people who could help us with that, both technically and people in our organization who would become, now we call them producers, who are people who take care of the technical issues, who distribute the lessons. We now changed, instead of giving everybody the notebook for the education programs, they get the sections week by week. So we changed the way we did things, and we involved more staff in helping us. And that freed up the volunteer leaders to really focus on their presentation rather than the details of how things were working technically and how the information was distributed. So that it was really a lot of stress right at the beginning. And we were in continual interaction with each other about what was working and not working.
Okay. I was gonna ask you, like, if you could help me with the question to ask. How would I follow up with something like that? Like, I didn't see anything that was kind of unsure. Like,
Sure. Let's get somebody else. I can answer that question, but maybe Kristen or Samantha, you can suggest to Paris some follow-ups.
I mean, maybe you could speak more, like, since Mark went into the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe you can ask some more questions about that. Like, maybe how has the organization changed because of the pandemic? Like, you could probably even bring it more into like area 3 from there, just because I feel like so much was covered, but like questions for area 3 could also like address what he just talked about.
Okay. How about you, Kristen? Thoughts about?
Yeah. I mean, I think you could also maybe, since you don't see a natural follow-up question, you could try some of the techniques like restating what he said and then
Right.
see if he expands from there. Like you could be like, I noticed, like what I understood or what I hear you say is that like there was a lot of stress, and like move on from there somehow.
Yeah, good. I'm going to share. I'm going to take a quick. I'm going to take a quick break in here and go to the. Okay. This section. Focus on words. It would really be helpful to write down words that you think are really key words. Honestly, I couldn't tell you the words that I was using, but because it was gone flipping through my mind quickly. But if you can write down 1 or 2 words that you say, and you could have said, can you say more about, you said the word, what was the word I was using perhaps? Support, maybe staff support. You could have said, that you talked about the staff supporting the volunteer leaders of the programs. Can you say more about how that worked? You don't have to have a really clear question. You just pick the words and say something more about that.
'cause I was thinking to ask more about what the volunteers did, because you said that they were able to
Yes.
focus more on a presentation.
Yes.
So I was thinking like that, but I didn't know if that would be like relevant or not.
No, totally. I think you want to get this person, myself, engaged in the experience and telling you what the experience is like. So yeah, absolutely. And as I think it was Sammy said, as we go through these things, restating things, otherwise known as mirroring, clarifying things. You could ask a clarifying question, rephrasing and using other words. It sounds like it was really difficult. Sounds like this transition was difficult. What were some of the things that you found the most difficult? So you could rephrase in your interpretation of what was saying, and then you could also summarize and say, now, you said, and during the pandemic that things were difficult. You had to make some quick transitions. Can you say more about how you did that?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So
Okay,
they don't have
cool.
to be very specific, just kind of,
You want to engage the person's experiences. No, they don't have to be specific. That's a good point. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Um, so, okay, let's go on to where are we? Area 3, Sammy.
Okay. Um, as I'm sure that you've seen, there have been soaring numbers of mental health cases and awareness due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And NAMI is an organization which has directly worked to help with these increasing numbers. During the pandemic, I definitely struggled to manage my mental health. It took me a long time to get used to our new reality and new anxieties which came with it. And because of this increase in mental health cases, I am sure that you have seen an increased number of NAMI services. So how have you responded, and how has NAMI responded as an organization to these
Okay,
new demands for services?
I think NAMI has responded really well because in terms of all the measures that we have, the number of classes have doubled, the number of our number of facilitators and programs have doubled. We have continued training facilitators. We've used our staff to support our facilitators in the programs. I myself engaged in advocacy programs. So we have found that at the same time, we have used more people to attend a variety of meetings. And so we've had to send, not everyone could go to every meeting. So we had a variety of people, new people attending meetings and reporting back. And the one thing that's been really difficult has been the coordination and communication among people who have been engaged in these advocacy roles. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Up to you. Over to you.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
So pick out some
Oh, wait,
words.
wait. You're stopping there with like what you were
No,
saying, or like
no,
what
no.
the.
I'm sorry. I did step out of role. I'm sorry. So I'm just going to pause now I'm through with my answer. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you just talked about how there have been like some communication problems at
Mhm.
NAMI. Do you feel as though that has increased because of COVID? Can you like pinpoint where exactly in the organization, you believe that this is coming from? Like, where exactly do you think the root of these problems is?
Yeah, it's a really good question because it's a complex one. It's not hard. Zoom allows you to have a lot more meetings and to have a lot more contact, but it's at the same time it's hard to read people on Zoom. It's harder to really. You don't have the same kind of contact, so there's been probably more contact among the volunteers, but it's slightly more difficult to really communicate as well. So people I think, had to learn to be a little more forthcoming, and expressive, because it doesn't come quite as clearly across as it would in person, where you have all this facial and you know, body language.
Do you think that the communication is like the lack thereof is between the volunteers and the people that work there? Or like, is it just all like, is it just even within those, like their own sectors? Like, where exactly?
Yeah, I think the communication problems are just kind of structural with not being in person and being remote. So it's really with everybody and everything. It's like I said, it's easier to have contact, but it's sometimes more difficult to make sure that people understand. Because I can't, sometimes, like, I can't see your all faces now, so I can't see if you're nodding or if I'm, there's just there's a discontinuity.
Mhm.
So
Well,
yeah.
maybe one solution could be is that like all the people that are in NAMI that feel comfortable that are vaccinated could have a meeting like once or twice a month. This way
Mm-hmm.
it's not a huge time commitment. Obviously, it would be mandated by like 6 feet apart. Like this way everyone feels
Mm-hmm.
comfortable. because there are still people obviously that are being very cautious.
Yeah.
And I feel like that could help a lot, because even if most of your meetings are over Zoom, I feel like something like that, just remembering that there actually are people behind the screen,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
extremely validating, and it makes you realize that like you're not just alone in this, like you're not just a singular person on a Zoom screen,
Mm-hmm.
like there actually is a community behind you, supporting you, understanding, and like you can see them. And maybe
Yeah.
also that could start with like, I mean, I'm sure that getting mental like health over the phone, it's extremely difficult, and obviously doesn't have the same effects. I don't believe. I feel like one-on-one interaction is what really is most fitting for the situation. And I think that maybe that should also be offered, if it's not already offered, for
Yeah.
the people in the groups that are attending for these issues.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We have had some in-person meetings along the board of NAMI. We had a kind of get together to address a little bit of the same thing. It's a little harder, I appreciate that. And it's just slightly harder when you get used to one form of communication. It's sometimes harder to shift into another. So we've had so we've tended to really keep it simple. But that's a great suggestion. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kristen, what was your observations on covering the third area?
I thought Sammy did a good job of picking out things you said. Like she picked out the word communication and then followed up on that with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought she did a good job of like naturally moving between questions and following up on what you said.
Yeah. Okay, good. Paris, you have any comments about it?
Oh no, I really think she did great. Making sure to like she have solutions.
Mhm.
She heard what you had to say about them. Asked like great questions to get to like the bottom of things, like
Mhm.
for lack of a better word. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I want to comment that Sammy, you kind of went into problem solving mode, which is another way of getting at someone's reactions to and could elicit then my own experiences about us trying to use that mode. But it took a lot of time to go through it. But I appreciate the impulse to do it, and I think that's your ideas were good. But what you really want to focus on is what are the experiences of the person, and it did bring out additional experiences, and I thought it was good. It just went on a little long. So I appreciate also that we're having to have a really truncated, shortened version of an interview. And shouldn't be nearly as rushed as what it seems to now, because we're having to combine observations and interview at the same time. So the role play introduces a little bit of stress and hurry up. So is that okay, Sammy? What I was saying?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Paris, why don't you summarize, at the end of the interview, when you're at almost an hour, you want to kind of summarize the interview and see if there's anything additional the person wants to talk about. So can you give us a summary now of the interview?
Yeah, so towards the beginning, you kind of talked about your leadership roles and experiences with NAMI, what it means to you and how you even got involved in the first place. The fact that you were president for 6 years is amazing. It really shows your dedication to the program. And then I appreciate your vulnerability in talking about the struggles with NAMI. Especially with the pandemic, I totally understand how it could have negatively affected not only NAMI, but the people who are also affected by NAMI, people
Mhm.
who go attend NAMI and like to seek help from them. And I can't think of the last thing. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I
That's
kind of
pretty
brain
darn good.
farted there.
That's pretty good,
Thank you.
Paris.
Thank you.
I mean,
I
I don't
started the
think
brain fart.
yeah, of course. Okay, so um, I think I think what we're going to do, I'm going to develop a form where as you go out and do your own interviews, you'll divide this up. So you'll decide who's going to do the summary and you can be ready for it. But I think you're going to need some notes. You're going to need to make notes. And during the interviews, you're going to also need to make notes just to identify the words that you're going to ask a person about, or the things you want to be, what things you want to clarify. So I encourage you to have a pencil and paper, pen and paper, and really take some quick notes as the informant is responding, so you can follow up in a seamless way. And then, of course, that whoever is going to do the summary will know to take a few notes that'll lead to be able to do the summary, because it's tough. Once you get into it, it really goes quickly. So, okay, I think we're just about 2 o'clock now. So this has been a great experience. I have recorded this. I'll make it available to the rest of the class. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the transcription. I'm going to send it to you all. And you can look at the transcription and see what that involves in cleaning it up, because the transcriptions are pretty good, but they're not perfect. And there's always some cleaning up that you're going to have to do. Now, I don't expect you to clean it up now, but I want you to look at it and see what's involved so you can understand the level of effort it's going to take to clean up the transcriptions. And of course, so then we'll decide who's going to do what on the transcription. I mean, we'll divide that work between. I think what we're going to do as a method is I'm going to give you a form with this kind of breakout. You're going to decide who's going to take the lead. There'll be 2 of you in every interview, so you'll have a backup. So there'll be a lead person and a backup, and the backup person can jump in if the lead person stumbles and support the lead person for each one of these areas. And that way you can trade off in the areas. And then at the end, we'll also figure out who's going to do what part of the transcription. So this is just a dry run to get the kind of process going and get you a sense of how it works. In the meantime, so I'll send you the video of this. I'll send you the form that we're going to use to divide the interviews up. And in the meantime, I'm going to invite someone, probably Judy Gardner, our executive director, and you as a group can interview her. And we'll divide up the interview with in terms of who's going to take lead and who's going to take backup, so that'll all be settled before she gets there, and we'll have a really full hour to do a more relaxed role play, and then we'll record that and we'll produce a transcript, and it'll become a process that then we'll repeat for each of our interviews. So we're sort of in the middle of this training process, and now we're into the role playing. But pretty soon, about as soon as you all feel comfortable, we're going to say, okay, now you can go out and do an interview, 2 of you by yourself. So how does that sound? Does that sound reasonable? Samantha, what's your reaction to that? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable.
Okay, cool. You'll get a better sense when you get the forms. Kristen, any questions or concerns?
No, I think that sounds very reasonable.
Okay, and Paris, how about you?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay, so practice your techniques with your friends and relatives. Don't tell them you're practicing, but practice these techniques. Pick up words that people say and say, can you tell me more about this word you used? So, I mean, I encourage you to actually practice these techniques in your everyday in your everyday world, or even in your classes, and see how it goes. And I think as you practice, you'll become more relaxed about using them. And so then if that's the case and we're all set, I'll see you next Friday.
All right. Have a good weekend.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Have a good, I hope everybody gets to see the game.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Take care.